Sweden is sending 18 new Archer artillery systems to Ukraine in the coming months.
It is one of 8 Archer systems delivered to Ukraine by Sweden, and it has finally arrived.
Artillery has been called the king of the battlefield for a reason. In Ukraine, it isn't a supporting arm, it's the engine that shapes the front line, the side that controls artillery tempo, controls whether positions hold, whether assaults stall, and whether supply routes stay usable long enough to matter. Russia built much of its battlefield approach around that idea: massed fires, constant pressure, a rhythm designed to exhaust Ukraine faster than Ukraine can replace what it loses. That model works best when the defender is forced to sit still. Ukraine has spent the last 2 years trying to solve that problem because static guns in a drone-saturated war don't just get targeted, they get hunted. This is where Sweden's Archer changes the battlefield. Not because it's a bigger gun than what Russia has, because it behaves like a weapon that doesn't stay long enough to be answered. Ukrainian crews are using Archer as a raiding system. It arrives late, fires fast, and disappears before Russian counter-battery can turn a firing solution into a kill. That is the kind of artillery Russia hates most. A lot of people misunderstand how artillery duels work in Ukraine. They picture counter-battery as a dramatic exchange, one battery firing and the other returning fire. That's not how it feels on the ground. On the ground, counter-battery is a race against time. Detection comes first, then confirmation, then the firing solution, then the strike. In the past, artillery crews survived by moving after they shot. In Ukraine, survival depends on moving before the enemy finishes the math. Archer is built around that exact problem. Reports from Swedish and Ukrainian sources have described Archer systems already in Ukrainian service, actively used at high tempo, with additional support being provided to keep them running under combat wear. The key detail isn't symbolic. It's practical. These guns are being used hard enough that barrels and spares have become part of the story. That tells you something. Ukraine isn't treating Archer like a museum piece. It's treating it like a frontline tool that earns its place every day. Sweden has transferred a batch of Archer systems to Ukraine that has been publicly described as 26 systems already delivered. More are planned. That pipeline matters because Archer isn't the kind of system you sprinkle into the force and forget. Its value grows as crews build muscle memory, as batteries coordinate with radars and drones, and as the enemy begins adjusting to a threat it can't comfortably counter. Sweden's commitment has also included complementary sensors, most notably Arthur counter-battery radars in the same aid packages, because Archer is at its most dangerous when the detection-to-strike loop is tight. A fast gun is useful. A fast gun paired with fast detection becomes oppressive. Archer isn't a towed howitzer dressed up with a truck. It's a 155mm system built around automation, protection, and speed. It uses a .52 caliber barrel, giving it the kind of reach modern counter-battery warfare demands, with real-world effectiveness, depending on ammunition type, target conditions, and how the mission is planned. The crew operates from an armored cab rather than standing exposed on the gun line. That matters because drones don't need perfect visibility to be lethal. They only need time. Archer is designed to deny them time. The system carries an automated ammunition handling setup with an internal magazine. That design choice changes the crew's workload and reduces the time spent outside the vehicle during a mission. It also allows the gun to deliver a tight burst of rounds rapidly, then transition back into movement. This isn't about comfort, it's about survivability. Archer's defining trait in Ukraine is the shoot and scoot cycle. Instead of rolling into position, building the gun line, setting the pieces, and committing to minutes of exposure, Archer is used more like a strike platform. It arrives, locks in, fires, and relocates while the battlefield is still processing what just happened. That cycle is why Ukrainian crews describe it as effective for counter-battery missions, where speed decides whether you score a hit or before you become the target. This is also why you're seeing footage and reports describing Archer as highly active. Once a weapon becomes difficult to punish, commanders start trusting it with more missions. Once commanders trust it, it becomes part of daily battle rhythm. Russia can still fire. The problem is that firing no longer guarantees a response window. Picture a typical mission. A Ukrainian drone team spots a Russian gun line changing position. The location gets refined. A firing solution forms. The window stays open for only a short time because Russian crews know they're being hunted too. A towed gun might take too long to set up. A slower, self-propelled system might fire, then still be present when return fire begins to arrive. Archer is used to compress the entire process. The gun arrives when the window is still open, fires a short mission, and leaves before the battle can stabilize around it. The point isn't the number of shells fired. The point is the speed at which the strike happens and the speed at which the platform stops being targetable. That is what makes it a counter-battery problem for Russia. Russia can still respond, it just has less time to do it. At this stage, it's tempting to treat Archer as a single system that performs well. That misses the real story. Archer isn't dangerous because it exists. It's dangerous because it fits into the way Ukraine is now fighting artillery wars. Drones for detection, radars for confirmation, rapid guns for execution, then immediate relocation before the enemy can close the loop. That is the battlefield environment Russia has been struggling to reverse, and it's exactly why Archer is now being talked about in the same breath as other mobile Western guns, because the war isn't being decided by who has the biggest artillery inventory, it's being decided by who can fire without getting caught. To understand why Archer matters, you have to understand what artillery has turned into in Ukraine. This isn't a slow duel between fixed gun lines anymore. It's a constant contest of exposure. Whoever stays visible longest loses. Whoever hesitates gets bracketed. Whoever fires twice from the same place invites a drone, then a shell. Archer was not designed for a quiet battlefield. It was designed for exactly this kind of pressure. This is where Archer stops being impressive and starts being dangerous. Most artillery systems still treat automation as a way to reduce workload. Archer treats it as a way to reduce time. The gun doesn't rely on crews stepping out into open ground to prepare each round. Ammunition is stored internally, handled mechanically, and fed into the system without the choreography that slows traditional guns down. That design choice matters because time outside the vehicle is the most dangerous phase of an artillery mission in Ukraine. Drones don't need to see a firing flash anymore. They look for patterns. They look for movement. They look for humans standing still. Archer minimizes all of that. Ukrainian crews operate the system from inside an armored cab that protects against shrapnel and small arms fire, which changes the psychological side of combat as much as the tactical one. Crews can focus on the mission instead of survival rituals. That confidence shows up in how often the gun is used. Counter-battery warfare relies on a sequence: detection, confirmation, calculation, response. Archer disrupts that sequence by compressing its own exposure window so tightly that the response often arrives after the gun is already gone. Reports from Ukrainian service describe Archer arriving in position, firing a rapid mission, and relocating in a time frame that leaves Russian counter-battery units reacting to a target that no longer exists. That isn't because Russian systems are useless, it's because they're late. In a war where seconds decide survival, being late is the same as being wrong. One of Archer's most effective features in combat is its ability to adjust firing parameters automatically so that multiple shells fired seconds apart land on the target at the same time. This isn't about spectacle, it's about shock. When rounds arrive simultaneously, crews don't get warning. Dugouts don't buy reaction time. Guns don't get a chance to displace mid-strike. Ukrainian units have used this capability to hit artillery positions, command nodes, and logistics points where disruption matters more than crater size. The value isn't the number of rounds fired. The value is denying the enemy a response window. Russia still fields enormous artillery strength, but the environment it operates in has shifted faster than its doctrine. Russian counter-battery systems are built around a response cycle that assumes the target will still exist when the math finishes. Against Archer, that assumption fails. Detection may occur, data may move, and return fire may launch, but the firing position is already gone by the time the response arrives. That delay changes behavior. Crews hesitate, missions shorten, and firepower loses reliability without ever being fully destroyed. Sweden isn't just sending Archer systems, it's funding barrels, spares, and long-term sustainment. That matters because barrels only wear out when a gun is firing constantly. The support package confirms Archer isn't being held back or rotated cautiously, it's embedded in daily combat use, firing often enough that sustainment has become a necessity rather than a precaution. That continuity is what turns a capable weapon into a persistent problem the enemy can't wait out. Archer doesn't match Russia's artillery volume. It changes the cost of using it. Russian guns fire, knowing they may be hunted. Archer fires, knowing it likely won't be. That imbalance compounds over time. Russia can still shoot. It just can't shoot comfortably, and that discomfort is the point. Right now, Archer stops being just a Swedish weapon in Ukrainian service. It becomes part of a system, paired with counter-battery radars, fed by drones, and coordinated through modern fire control networks. Archer represents a style of artillery warfare Russia has struggled to suppress. The next part is where this becomes strategic rather than tactical, because once mobile artillery starts surviving longer than the guns hunting it, the balance of pressure begins to shift. Once Archer is placed inside Ukraine's broader fire control system, its impact stops being about individual strikes and starts reshaping how entire sectors behave. This is where Russia's problem deepens. Because artillery wars aren't decided by single guns, they're decided by which side controls the rhythm of detection, response, and survival. Archer bends that rhythm in Ukraine's favor. On its own, Archer is fast. Connected to counter-battery radar, it becomes predatory. Sweden's decision to pair Archer deliveries with Arthur counter-battery radars is not a symbolic add-on. Arthur systems are designed to detect incoming artillery fire, calculate launch points, and feed that data directly into firing solutions in seconds. That matters because it collapses the kill chain. A Russian gun fires. Arthur detects the trajectory. Coordinates move digitally. Archer receives the mission already computed. Rounds leave the barrel before the Russian crew finishes its firing cycle. By the time return fire would normally arrive, Archer is already relocating. This isn't theoretical. Ukrainian reporting consistently describes Archer being used as a reactive hunter rather than a passive support weapon, which flips the traditional artillery relationship on its head. Instead of absorbing fire and responding later, Ukrainian units can respond immediately and disappear. One of the least discussed effects of Archer is what it does to morale on the other side. Artillery crews survive by routine. They rely on predictable windows where they know they can fire, reload, and move without immediate punishment. Archer breaks that trust. When counter-battery arrives faster than expected and lands where crews thought they were safe, hesitation creeps in. Crews wait longer before firing. Commanders double-check positions. Batteries fire shorter missions than planned. Those decisions feel small in isolation. Over time, they reduce output. Reduced output means less suppression. Less suppression gives Ukrainian maneuver units more freedom. More freedom increases pressure on Russian defensive lines. The gun doesn't just destroy equipment, it reshapes behavior. Ukraine's battlefield is saturated with drones on both sides. Visibility is constant. Concealment windows are short. In that environment, survivability isn't about armor thickness or sheer numbers. It's about how long you remain interesting. Archer's wheeled chassis allows it to relocate rapidly without the mechanical strain-tracked systems face over long road movements. Combined with multispectral camouflage and reduced crew exposure, it becomes a system that refuses to stay visible long enough to be punished. That's why confirmed losses remain extremely low relative to usage, not because the gun is invincible, because it's rarely where the enemy expects it to be. When artillery survives longer, infantry and armor gain confidence to move. Ukrainian commanders can plan operations, knowing that fire support is likely to remain available throughout the engagement, rather than being neutralized early. That reliability allows tighter coordination between reconnaissance drones, strike assets, and ground units. Instead of waiting for perfect conditions, Ukrainian forces can exploit brief windows, knowing Archer can respond quickly and then disappear. This isn't about overwhelming force, it's about timing dominance. By committing to a total of 44 Archers and sustaining them with spare barrels and long-term support, Sweden is signaling that this isn't emergency aid, it's structural. That matters because wars of attrition punish one-off donations. Systems that can't be maintained fade quickly. Archer isn't fading, it's being embedded, and embedding a system means it shapes doctrine, training, and planning around it. Archer doesn't erase Russia's artillery advantage, it undermines its reliability. Russian firepower still exists, but it increasingly operates under pressure, uncertainty, and shortened firing windows. Ukrainian firepower, though smaller in scale, operates with higher confidence and survivability. That imbalance grows quietly, and quiet shifts are the ones that last. Archer represents a trend rather than an exception. It shows how automation, mobility, and integration outperform mass in modern artillery warfare. It demonstrates that surviving the counter-battery fight matters more than winning the opening exchange. Most importantly, it shows that Ukraine's artillery problem is no longer about shortage alone. It's about quality of presence, and presence is what decides who controls the battlefield over time. Archer's real impact isn't measured in destroyed guns or viral strike clips. It's measured in what Russia can no longer do comfortably. Russian artillery doctrine depends on time. Sweden's decision to expand deliveries to a planned fleet of 44 systems while funding spare barrels and long-term sustainment locks Archer into Ukraine's artillery future rather than treating it as emergency aid. That shifts doctrine. Crews train around it. Commanders plan with it. Fire control networks adapt to it. Russia hasn't found a clean counter because the problem isn't technical, it's systemic.